Hello, we're going to be talking about single sign-on or host authentication for your D3 Unix platforms. Single sign-on is a topic that is kind of bantered around quite a bit these days, making it simpler for users to log in one time and have access to all the resources that they need within their environment. And host authentication is what allows D3 to participate in this environment. So we'll be showing you how to go about doing that and some tips and tricks and differences to expect once you have enabled host authentication on your server. This is our legal disclaimer so that we protect ourselves and you from doing anything you shouldn't. And my name is Tim Rude, and I'll be doing the demonstration today. Okay, as you can see, I'm here on my Red Hat 8 box, and because I'm on Red Hat 8, because of the restrictions requirements of the operating system with the database, it means I will be demoing this with 10.3.2. Before we get into showing you inside of D3 what this all means, I'm going to show you some configuration things that happen during the installation of D3. On Linux, which we're on right now, we actually update a file out here in the etc folder in the pam.d directory called D3. So we put in this PAM configuration, which basically is the default PAM configuration, or mimics or mocks what you actually have set up on your system, so that you can just utilize D3 in what your system is already utilizing. If you change something on your system that might affect D3, it might behoove you to rerun D3 setup to reconfigure this. After you remove this particular D3 file, it will be recreated when you run the D3 setup for D3. The other thing that needs to be done in order to enable host authentication in the Unix environment is your configuration file, and that typically is pic0. So if we look at the pic0 file that's located in user libpic, you will see that we have a host authentication statement set in our pic0 file. This means that host authentication is enabled on this machine. If it's not, the default is off, so there may not be a statement in here at all, but you do need to use that entire word host authentication space on in order to enable host authentication. In the other statement, it will not be enabled. So what that means is if I type D3, I am going to log directly into, in my case, TCL within D3. It bypassed everything else because I have a user macro already set up. So the same user macros that you have configured in the traditional authentication methods can still be utilized in your host authentication methods. And we'll show you my users item. Well, I'm in a different account, so I'll need to DM users. And my Unix user ID is troot. So I have it do some of the typical stuff that happens in a regular user macro, and then I've added a few things that I prefer for myself. So I run the termu program, so it sets up the width and depth automatically, so I don't have to think about what my screen size is. I have this little title program that puts some extra information on the title bar of my window, which you can't see because of the way this recording is being done. It's kind of helpful information. And then I automatically go to the SQL demo account just as a choice to show that I am actually running a user macro when I log in. And so you can see that I am in the SQL demo account, which is where it told me to go. I could remove these things and it would actually prompt me for the account name. So the other thing is, if you say, well, that doesn't seem very secure, but I'd already logged in. I was sitting at a Unix shell, so I was already logged in, and it actually uses the user ID as the same in Unix as it does inside of D3. So I can change that I can type exit to get out, which is what you would normally do. But the one difference between, or one of the differences between host authentication and traditional authentication is if I attempt to do an auth where you would normally sit at a logon prompt, it's not going to go to the logon prompt. It's going to actually send you back to the Unix prompt. It's going to effectively do the same thing as an exit. So now if I type D3 and I say HA, or host authentication force check, it's now going to prompt me for my user ID. And here I have to use my credentials for my Unix login, not my credentials for D3. And again, you can see I've executed my user login macro and I'm in the SQL demo account. But that's how you can actually make it re-challenge, so you're not making real use of the single sign-on mechanism, but you're actually challenging for the user and password credentials from your environment, whether that's an LDAP server or some other mechanism that you used, the Unix password file, whatever. So we've done this because there's been numerous requests for better security in the password management. You want password aging enabled, you want other things. Well, if you turn this on, then you've got your choice of what type of security mechanisms you want to use in your passwords and your users, and the control within your domain, rather than it being specific to your D3 application server. The HA force check, obviously our D3 telnet service that sits out there and listens, does automatically have the HA force checks turned on because it is a service that's out there running as root, and we wouldn't want to allow everybody to just get in directly. So it is your first connection into the database, into the server, the Unix server in this case. And so it will challenge for credentials so that you will be challenged at that point rather than being challenged directly by the operating system. The database will actually make use of the operating system, however it's set up through the use of PAM, in order to use the appropriate username and password from the appropriate location that you've configured. And finally, here are some other courses that are related to securing your D3 data at rest and in transit. Hope you enjoy viewing these other videos as well. Thank you.